I drove my wife's best friend home. Then, she whispered, "Take me somewhere private." And everything changed. I knew something was wrong. The moment my wife's best friend closed the passenger door and whispered, "Please, don't take me home yet." I glanced at her, confused. She was staring straight ahead, her fingers tightly wrapped around her phone. Then she turned toward me. "Take me somewhere private," she said quietly. "I need to tell you something before it's too late." My hands tightened around the steering wheel. Because this wasn't just my wife's best friend. Her name was Emily. She had been part of my wife Sarah's life since college. She had attended our wedding, stayed at our house countless times, and knew almost every secret Sarah had ever kept. And now she was sitting beside me at midnight, asking me to take her somewhere private. I had no idea that the next 10 minutes would change my marriage, my friendship with Emily, and the way I understood everything that had happened over the previous 6 months. It had started at Sarah's birthday dinner. The evening was supposed to be simple. Dinner, cake, a few drinks, then everyone would go home. But Sarah had been acting strangely all night. She barely spoke to me. Whenever I tried to ask if something was wrong, she smiled and said, "I'm just tired." Emily noticed it too. Across the table, she kept looking between Sarah and me. After dinner, Sarah suddenly told me she wanted to stay at her sister's place because she had an early appointment nearby. I didn't think much of it, but when everyone began leaving, Emily approached me. "Can you give me a ride?" "Sure." Sarah had already left. So Emily climbed into my car, and I started driving. For the first few minutes, neither of us said anything. The silence felt uncomfortable. Finally, Emily sighed. "Do you ever feel like Sarah is hiding something from you?" My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" She looked out the window. "Nothing. Emily." She shook her head. "Forget I said anything." I wanted to press her, but I knew Emily well enough to understand when she wasn't ready to talk. So I kept driving. A few minutes later, she suddenly said, "Turn here." I looked at her. "This isn't the way to your apartment." "Where are we going?" "Just drive." I followed her directions until we reached an empty park overlooking the city. I parked beneath a streetlight. Emily didn't get out. Instead, she turned toward me. Her eyes were wet. "Take me somewhere private," she whispered. My heart started pounding. "Emily, what's going on?" She took a deep breath. "I need to tell you the truth." "What truth?" She pulled her phone from her purse. "I found something." She unlocked it and handed it to me. There were screenshots, messages, between Sarah and someone I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was an ordinary conversation. Then I read the dates, 6 months earlier. The messages were about money, large amounts of money. And one sentence made my blood run cold. "He can never know. Not until everything is finished." I looked at Emily. "What is this?" She whispered, "I found it by accident." "Where?" "In Sarah's old laptop." My mind raced. Why were you looking through her laptop? I wasn't snooping. She wiped her eyes. She asked me to help recover some files. I found those messages. I stared at the screen. Who was she talking to? I don't know. Then how do you know this is about me? Emily swallowed. Because I heard Sarah talking about you. What did she say? Emily hesitated. She said you'd never forgive her if you knew the truth. I felt like the air had disappeared from the car. What truth? Emily looked down. That's what I've been trying to find out. I handed her the phone. So why tell me now? Because tonight, Sarah called me. My chest tightened. What did she say? She told me she was ending everything. What does that mean? Emily looked directly into my eyes. She said she was going to tell you the truth tomorrow. I sat there in silence. For 6 months, I had believed my marriage was normal. Maybe not perfect, but normal. Now I was sitting in a dark car, looking at evidence that my wife had been keeping a life-changing secret from me. I asked Emily, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Her expression changed. "Because I was scared." "Of what?" "Of destroying your marriage." I looked away. "You should have told me." "I know." Her voice cracked. "But there was something else." I turned toward her. "What?" Emily reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She handed it to me. "My name is on this." Inside was a letter. Sarah had written it. My hands trembled as I read. It said that several years ago, before we were married, Sarah had borrowed money from someone to help her family through a financial crisis. The debt had grown. Interest had accumulated, and eventually the person she owed had threatened to expose her family if she didn't pay. Sarah had been secretly using money from a separate account to settle the debt. But 6 months earlier, she had lost her job temporarily. She had panicked, and instead of telling me, she had made a terrible decision. She had taken out a loan using documents connected to our shared finances. She wasn't having an affair. She wasn't secretly planning to leave me. She was drowning in a secret she was ashamed of. I stared at the letter. Then I noticed one final line. I asked her to keep him away from this until I could fix it myself. I looked at Emily. "You knew all of this?" She nodded. "But enough." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Sarah begged me not to." I leaned back against the seat. For a moment I felt angry, then hurt, then strangely relieved. I had spent the last hour imagining the worst possible explanation, but the truth was different. Still painful, still serious, but different. Emily reached for the door. "I should go." "Wait." She stopped. I looked at her. "Why did you bring me here?" She hesitated. "Because I knew if I told you in front of Sarah you'd never hear the whole story. And because I needed you to know that Sarah isn't the person you think she is." I frowned. "What does that mean?" Emily smiled sadly. "It means she's worse at asking for help than anyone I've ever met." I almost laughed. That was exactly like Sarah. She would carry the world on her shoulders before admitting she needed help. Emily looked down at her hands. "There's one more thing." "What?" "She loves you." I didn't answer. Emily continued. "She was terrified that if you knew about the debt, you'd see her differently." She was right. Emily looked surprised. I shook my head. Not because I'd stopped loving her. I looked through the windshield. Because I'd wonder why she thought she had to face it alone. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You should tell her that." Then stopped. "You're not angry with me?" I thought about it. I was. "And now?" "Now I think you were trying to protect your friend." She smiled. "That's what friends do." I nodded. "Sometimes husbands need protecting too." She laughed softly. For the first time that night, the tension disappeared. I drove Emily home. Before she got out, she turned around. "Take care of her." I nodded. "I will." Then she added, "And take care of yourself too." She closed the door. I sat there for another minute. Then I drove home. Sarah was waiting in the living room. She looked exhausted. The moment she saw me, she stood. "You know." It wasn't a question. I nodded. She closed her eyes. "Emily told you." "No." She looked confused. "I found the letter." Her face crumpled. "I was going to tell you tomorrow." "I know." She sat down. I was ashamed. I sat beside her. "How much?" "Everything." She explained the debt, the threats, the loan, the fear, the nights she couldn't sleep because she was terrified that one phone call would destroy everything we built. When she finished, she whispered, "I thought you'd leave me." I took her hand. "I might be angry." She looked at me. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "But I'm not leaving." She covered her face. And for the first time in 6 months, she finally cried. Not the quiet kind. The kind where someone has been holding everything inside for far too long. I pulled her into my arms. "We're going to fix this," I said. How? Together. She looked at me. You're not going to ask why I hid it? I already know. Why?